Hi folks, I'm Greg Marchand, President of AAT Incorporated. AAT is extremely happy to bring you our latest DVD designed to help you as a service writer build valuable relationships with your customers, increase your selling skills, and improve your communication within your repair facility. This video will provide you with an understanding of what it's like to be a customer of an auto repair shop. Furthermore, it will give you tools to increase customer retention and advice on dealing with challenging customers. Many of the ideas and concepts presented here can be found in our book, Service Management Made Simple. All of the material found here in this video and in this book has been gathered from industry best practices learned from repair shops just like yours all over the country. It is our intention at AAT to bring you training that will make your job easier, more enjoyable, and make business more profitable to you and your employer. Use this video to support what you've learned in other classes, what your own experience has taught you, and what you've read in Service Management Made Simple. This video has been organized into short segments so that you can easily and quickly review areas of specific interest to you. We suggest viewing one section a day or one section a week just to keep your mind fresh and keep you continually exploring new ways of improving customer retention and profitability. Share the ideas presented here with your fellow employees and use these ideas to develop your own ideas that will work for your specific place of business. Take from the video what you want, what you see most immediately useful to you, and leave the rest to review another day. We sincerely hope that the information presented here allows you to experience higher levels of profitability, increased customer satisfaction, and makes your job easier and more enjoyable. Hi everyone, I'm Greg Marchand, President of AAT Incorporated. AAT is very happy to bring you our latest DVD that was designed to help you as a service writer build valuable relationships with your customers, as well as help you increase your selling skills and improve communication within the repair facility in which you work. This video will provide you with an understanding of what it's like to be the customer of an automotive repair shop. Furthermore, it gives you tools to increase customer retention as well as advice on dealing with challenging customers, those that you deal with every day. Many of the ideas and concepts presented here in this video can be found in our book, Service Management Made Simple. All of the material, both here in the book and in our video, has been gathered from industry best practices that we've learned from repair shops just like yours all over the country. It's our intention here at AAT to bring you training that will make your job easier, your job more enjoyable, and it will make business more profitable to both you and your employer. Use this video to support what you've learned in other classes you've taken, what your own experience has taught you over time, and what you've read in books like Service Management Made Simple. This video has been organized into short segments so that you can easily and quickly review areas that are of specific interest to you. We suggest viewing one section a day or even one section a week just to keep your mind fresh and to keep you continually exploring new ways of improving customer retention and profitability. Share the ideas presented here with your fellow employees and use these ideas to develop ideas of your own that will work for your specific place of business and in your specific market. Take from this video what you want, what you see most immediately useful to you, and leave the rest to review another day. We at AAT sincerely hope that the information presented here allows you to experience higher levels of profitability, increased customer satisfaction, and that it makes your job easier and a lot more enjoyable. Thank you for watching.
I think you're going to love it.
Now, before we move into a discussion about the importance of customer retention and customer satisfaction, or what it's like to be a customer in a repair shop, I want to talk briefly about what every customer that walks through a door to your repair shop means to you. Now, the industry is full of big numbers, and throughout my career I've been told that each customer that comes through the door of our shop is worth $50,000 over the course of their lifetime, or $100,000 or $250,000. And that's great. You can back into any one of those numbers. You can figure out where that number came from if you sat down and worked hard enough at it. The challenge I have with that is when you come walking through the door of our shop here, I don't see a big pile of dollar bills with 2 feet. I can't equate that $100,000 over the course of your lifetime that you'll spend with me with you, the customer, walking in on any given day. I prefer to think of it like this. Let's say that we close 10 repair orders a day here at our shop. And on each one of those repair orders, we bill an average of 1.5 hours labor on every one of those repair orders. Okay? So 10 ROs, an hour and a half average labor for each one. Let's say that we bill $80 an hour, that's our posted labor rate, and we're open 5 days a week, 50 weeks a year. If you throw the math on that, you'll discover that ignoring all the parts, profits, and everything else, all the other incremental stuff, that just in customer labor sales each year, at 10 ROs a day, an hour and a half an RO, we will make $300,000 in customer labor. Now, I would ask you this. How much would it take to increase that $300,000 to $400,000? Here's the answer. A half-hour repair order. Let me ask you this. Do you think you could increase that 1.5 hours per repair order by just a half an hour? I'm guessing most of you said yes. In the seminars that we conduct, the answer is usually, yeah, I could do that. So my big question to you now is, how would you do that? Now, in the seminars, I get all kinds of crazy answers, and I tell all kinds of stories about some of the answers. The bottom line is everybody has some way of increasing customer labor sales by half an hour per repair order. And they range from selling more parts to better explaining preventative maintenance to using a better job with a multi-point inspection form to running certain specials. Whatever your answer is, I would suggest to you that if you focus on the customer and the relationship that you build with each and every customer that comes walking through that door, that half hour will be easy. Think about it. I'm willing to bet that you and your organization, yesterday, today, or tomorrow, will have a customer that will come walking through the door, set their keys on your counter, and say, I'll see you at 5 o'clock, or call me when it's ready. And they walk out the door. And you know, because you've dealt with this customer in the past, that they mean that. If you find something during the oil change, you discover that they need an alignment, or you discover that they need front brakes, the answer is going to be yes. Think about why. And I think you'll find the answer is they trust you, or at least appears like they trust you. So in the following segments, we're going to talk about what it's like to be a customer of a repair shop, what you can do to better build those relationships with those customers, and what your ultimate goal is in attaining trust. Stay tuned. So our goal is to build trust with every single customer that walks through the door. And in order to build trust, we have to create some very specific things in our business operation. I call this the customer satisfaction pyramid. And notice the top of the pyramid is trust, and that's what we're always trying to get to. But in order to get to trust, you've got to create first an exceptional customer service experience for every customer that walks through the door. Add to that fixed right first time, and you will get to trust. Now, the question becomes, can you get to trust with just fixed right first time? And I would say to you that yes, for some customers, you can. Some customers, they don't worry about the experience that you, the service writer, are going to provide them at the counter. As long as that vehicle gets fixed properly the first time, that they'll keep coming back to you. And that's okay. But for many customers, they need a very different customer service experience because they perceive this experience very differently than what you might think. Think about this for a minute. You come to work at the shop, like ours here, every single day. All the noises out back, all the zipping air tools, all the hissing air, all the cussing that might go on, all the tool tossing that might go on, all of that stuff is background noise to you. You're used to it. But for the customer walking through that door, they're not used to that. That's not part of their world. That's nothing like what they see at home, nothing like what they see in their place of business, wherever that may be. And it's a very foreign feeling to them. I equate this to the scene in Star Wars where the two robots, C-3PO and R2-D2, are walking past the robot torture chamber, and they hear all kinds of squealing and hissing and weird noises back there, and they look through that door and they're just wondering what is going on. It's the same thing for your customers. You might have a wall back here that separates the customer area from the shop, but they hear those noises. That wall doesn't insulate everything, and it's a very foreign world to them. That car also is something very special to them. They take great pride in many of the cars that they drive. It's their baby. It's very personal. And they're about to hand you the keys to something very personal, and you're going to take it back into that weird world back there that they know nothing about, but there's a lot of noise and a lot of goings on back there that they don't understand. So the customer's anxiety when they walk through the door is right here already. And then on top of that, they've got whatever problem that they're expecting you to deal with that's raised their anxiety level. And then it's raised even further by having to bring their vehicle here to have it worked on. So creating an exceptional service experience, the base of that pyramid is the beginning of trust. You're always trying to get to trust. Fixed right first time? Yeah, you got to do that for every single customer. And at the end of the DVD, we'll discuss that. But we want to talk about creating an exceptional service experience, and that begins with understanding your customer. Stay tuned for more. So let's talk about the customer perception of the automotive business. People have this distinct perception of us, and especially automotive repair. And that perception is that the industry is dishonest, it's a ripoff, that we're not trustworthy, that we don't always get it fixed right the first time, that we're here to take advantage of them. Now, that's not your fault, it's not my fault, it's not anybody's fault. The industry created this over a long period of time. But let's talk about where that came from. Because although it's not our fault, we have to deal with it every single day. Now, here's the first thing I want you to consider. Think about on Friday afternoon after work, Friday evening, you go into your local establishment to purchase whatever your favorite beverage is. And you walk up to the cooler. So close your eyes and picture this in your mind while I'm talking. You walk up to the cooler, you're opening the cooler, you're reaching for that six-pack of your choice, and on the shelf it says a price tag. Let's say the price is $6.99. Picture yourself reaching for that six-pack, you're seeing the $6.99, you're taking it out of the cooler, and you walk up to the cashier's counter. You plunk it down on the cashier's counter, you're reaching for your wallet or you're reaching into your purse, and the cashier looks at you and he says, "I'm sorry, sir," or "I'm sorry, ma'am, I can't sell you this six-pack of beverage unless you buy 5 pounds of hamburger, 24 hamburger buns, a bottle of ketchup, some relish, and a bag of chips." What would you say? What would you be thinking? I just came in to buy this six-pack of whatever it is. I don't need 5 pounds of hamburger. I didn't want a bag of chips. I didn't want relish. But isn't this what we do in this business at these counters every single day? It is, isn't it? The customer walks into your store and they see up on a menu board somewhere, alignment, $74.95. Now, Uncle Joe or Dad or Grandpa or neighbor John said they needed an alignment. They didn't really know why, but they knew they needed an alignment. Maybe the steering wheel is just off center. So they come walking through your door, they walk up to your counter, and in their mind, they've reached up on that shelf and they've taken a $74.95 alignment off the wall and they plunked it down on the counter. And you looked them right in the eye and you said, "I'm sorry, I can't sell you this $75 alignment unless you buy 5 pounds of hamburger, a bag of chips, a tie rod, a ball joint, 4 tires, and your alignment." And they're thinking of you. They're thinking about you. "I knew it. You're trying to rip me off. Now, where does that come from? It comes from a lack of knowledge, right? You know why you can't sell that alignment to them without the 5 pounds of hamburger, without the tie rod or the ball joint or whatever else that vehicle needs. They don't have any idea why. They just knew they needed alignment. They saw $75 on your menu board and they said, I want that. To them, that was the product. To you, an alignment is part of a bigger system. So we can talk about how we can get around that, and of course it's knowledge, and we'll talk in a later segment about imparting knowledge. Here's the other perception I want you to think about. Maybe you've bought a TV recently, maybe you've bought a new stereo, maybe you bought a new movie, maybe you went out to dinner at a fancy restaurant, and you spent a whole pile of your hard-earned money. Let's say you bought a TV and you spent $1,000 on that TV. And what did you do? You got it home, you got it all hooked up, you popped the beverage of your choice, you sat down in your recliner with the remote and you started watching it. And you were excited, weren't you? You thought that looked awesome, you knew where that $1,000 went. Now take that same $1,000 and put it into 4 tires and an alignment. And drive your vehicle home after forking out that $1,000. And what does the customer notice? Absolute best case, they notice nothing. Car drives the same, sounds the same, feels the same, nothing. Worst case, they got a shimmy for their $1,000. It's very, very different when you're spending money to have your automobile repaired than it is when you're buying something you can see, eat, taste, etc. So think about that, because those are the perceptions that you're dealing with. And when we're trying to get to trust, when we're trying to build that customer satisfaction pyramid, part of the exceptional customer service experience, the base of that pyramid, is understanding customer perception. In the next segment, we're going to talk about types of customer. More to come. So let's discuss customer type. We've been talking about the customer satisfaction pyramid and creating an exceptional service experience. And to create the exceptional service experience, we've got to understand that person that's walking through our door, each and every individual. Now, when I say exceptional customer service experience, I'm not talking about creating Disneyland for every single person that walks through the door. You don't have to have a cafe in your waiting room. You don't have to have nice leather furniture in your waiting room. You don't have to have the best coffee in town in the waiting room. But you've got to understand who that customer is when they come walking through the door and give them an exceptional service experience. Give them what their needs are. So let's talk about customer types. Now, psychologists and sociologists group customers in 1,000 different ways. And if you Google customer psychology, you'll find all kinds of different information on customers. And there's tons of studies on them. What I've chosen to do here is to group customers along 2 axes. And I believe that customers are either task-oriented or people-oriented. And then they either prefer fast transactions or slow transactions. And if you do this along 2 axes, then you end up with 4 quadrants that any given customer can fall within. My challenge to you is to identify by quadrant what each customer that walks through your door is like, because this will help give you the tools that you need to create that exceptional customer service experience. So in quadrant 1, we've got a customer that's very task-oriented and prefers fast, quick transactions. In quadrant 2, we've got somebody that's also task-oriented, but they need a slower transaction. Quadrant 3, we've got a slow transaction person who's a people person. And then quadrant 4, we've got somebody that prefers fast transactions, but they're also people. They want to feel a connection. So let's explore these 4 quadrants further. And keep in mind that your challenge is to identify each customer that walks through the door, which quadrant they lay in. I would suggest that as we start this discussion in the next 4 segments, that you think about what quadrant are you in? How are you a customer? What quadrant do you fall in? Where does your spouse fall into these quadrants? Because that helps you learn to identify where others may be. As you move about town, as you go about your day, as you travel, observe people who are customers and be thinking to yourself, what quadrant are they? And watch the transaction and try to establish what their needs are as a customer. You see, too often when they come walking through our door, we see that person there. We recognize them as a customer, but we recognize them as somebody with a car that needs to be worked on. We get the information from the car and we say, okay, we'll see you later, and we're focused on the car. We forget about that specific customer's needs. Remember, we're doing this because we've got to overcome the industry reputation, and we've got to overcome the customer perception of the 5 pounds of hamburger or the $1,000 TV that they couldn't watch. Okay? So that's where we're going with this information. As we go through the next 4 segments, be thinking about where you fit into this matrix and where your spouse or significant other fits into this matrix. Okay? Here we go. So, identifying customer types. I'm going to start with what I call quadrant 1. So, we're with a task-oriented individual who prefers a fast transaction. Now, I'll admit, I'm quadrant 1 through and through. Okay? Quadrant 1 individuals, convenience is the prime motivator. It's all about convenience. These people have high expectations in general. The attitude is, you do your job, I'll do my job. They don't have time for a lot of explanation. They don't want a lot of explanation. They're busy. They tend to be on the go. They can be business owners. They can be executives. They can be somebody with just a very, very busy life. So what does this person look like when they come walking through your door? Usually they're relatively energetic, they're relatively high-strung, and they've already got their keys out. They're ready to go. They're expecting you to be ready for them. They prefer efficient, fast transactions. Convenience, again, is the big motivator. So how do you handle this? Now, also, they appear to be trusting. They appear to be trusting. These people are often what I call key throwers, or they look like key throwers. They're the ones that will come walking through the door, plunk the keys on the desk and say, see you later. Let me know when it's done. And what I mean by they appear to be trusting is this. Recently I went to a repair shop. I had a brake problem on a vehicle that I drive. I walked through the door. Now I'm very quadrant 1. The transaction was fast. They were ready for me. The repair order was pre-printed. I confirmed the complaint. I went for a road test with with the technician, because I really didn't want to waste a whole lot of time. They called me 2 hours later. They said, here's what it is. They do the work. I pick the vehicle up at the end of the day, and I get home and the brake noise is still there. Now, I've got a busy life. I didn't have time to bring it back. I didn't even bother calling them back. That service writer was pretty sure I trusted him, because I came in, I was an easy transaction, right? I came in, I put my keys down on the desk, I signed the repair order, I was gone, I said yes when they called me, I came back, paid my bill, picked up the vehicle, and I walked away. That was easy, wasn't it? I'm quadrant 1, fast, easy transactions. They did it. What didn't they do though? They didn't fix it right the first time. Fixed right first time is always necessary in any of these quadrants. Remember that. So what do you need to provide that quadrant 1 individual? First of all, you need to gather information quickly. You need to make the transaction efficient and fast. That's what's going to keep them coming back. You need to make things convenient for them. And you need to fix it right the first time. Let's talk briefly about convenience. What's the prime motivator with quadrant 1 customers? Convenience, right? Okay, so it's all about convenience. If I come walking up to your desk, how do you make it more convenient for a quadrant 1 customer? Well, a couple things you might want to do. Quadrant 1 customer doesn't want to wait. Whatever you can do to move them along their merry way, they're going to appreciate, and they're going to talk about it. So if it's a loaner vehicle, if it's a rental car agreement that you have for an inexpensive rental car for the day, they'll take you up on the offer. If it's a ride to work, or if it's, we've got wireless in the waiting room, this won't take very long if you want to use the wireless in the waiting room. Whatever you can do to make it convenient. Now let's say you do move them along. Let's say that they come in, they drop their keys, they sign the repair order, they're out the door. How are you going to let them know what's wrong with the vehicle and what needs to be done to fix it? Keep this in mind. Many people will pick up the phone and call. Many Quadrant 1 individuals are extremely busy during the day. Take me, for example. What do I spend my days doing? Exactly what you see. I'm in front of groups of 40 or more people every single day doing this. My phone rings. I don't answer it. On a break, I might pick up my phone and I've got 10 voicemails. So now I've got to call in, wade through my voicemails. I get one from you. You called me up with an estimate to fix my brakes. I probably can't call you back right then because we're about to start again. Now maybe I can call you back at lunch. Maybe I forget to at lunch. Maybe I get another 10 voicemails by lunch. And at the end of the day, I call you up and say, hey, you fixed my vehicle yet? And you go, well, no, we never heard back from you. How could you have made it more convenient for me? Ask. Ask your Quadrant 1 customer, what is the most convenient manner in which we can contact you? And oftentimes, it's going to be text or email, because you can return emails. You can return texts very quickly. It takes no time. It does take time to call in your voicemail, retrieve it, and then call back. We're in a world now that's really fast-paced. We've got a lot of smartphones out there. Use the technology. If your current phone system or your current email system can't send texts, talk to your IT folks about how you can. There's a lot of email systems that can actually send to texts now. So think about it. It's got to be convenient. Convenience the motivator. If you can get them moving on their way, they'll like you. If you can contact them in a very convenient manner, you're going to get more business. You're going to be more profitable. How? Think about this. Back to the number one motivator with this group, convenience. If your vehicle is here and you're a Quadrant 1, and I call you up and I say, while we were performing whatever job you came in for, we noticed, whatever it may be, what do you suppose the answer is going to be? Go ahead and do it. You've got the vehicle. Go ahead and do it. It's there. You've got a 98% chance of selling work to this individual because convenience is the motivator. You've got to recognize it when they walk through the door. We'll talk more later about other tools you can use to handle Quadrant 1 customers. But remember, Quadrant 1, task-oriented, fast transaction, convenient, efficient, quick. Stay tuned for more. So we've discussed Quadrant 1, and that was task-oriented, fast transaction individuals. Now let's move over to Quadrant 2. So we're still talking task-oriented individuals, but they prefer slower transactions. I call these individuals the processors. They need a little bit more information. They need a little bit more time to think. They need to understand more than the Quadrant 1 individuals do. They need bullet points. You can think of it like that. They need the bullet points. How do you handle these individuals? Well, you slow things down. Obviously, you slow things down. You don't give them a ton of information. You don't write them a book. You don't read a book to them. You give them the bullet points. You tell them what happened, why it happened, and what you've got to do to fix it. You see, with Quadrant 1, they likely really didn't care what happened or why. They just care what you did to fix it. With Quadrant 2, they need more explanation. They do want to know what happened, why it happened, maybe what they could do to avoid it in the future, and what you're going to do to fix it. Show and tell works really, really well with these individuals. And when I say show and tell, I mean take them out to their vehicle. Take them out to their vehicle in the shop and show them what was wrong. Show them what it should look like. Show them what it looks like now. Explain to them what you're going to do to repair this vehicle. Oftentimes shops have those signs in them that say no customers allowed due to insurance regulations or whatever it may be. Think about how unfriendly that may appear. You see, that's a very personal item that you have out in the shop, right? And these Quadrant 2 individuals, they're a little bit more nervous about this repair experience than Quadrant 1. Quadrant 1's in and out. They trust you to do your job, they do their job, it's all good. Quadrant 2 needs more information. They need their anxiety brought down a little bit, and your job is to help manage that anxiety. Show and tell, bringing them out to show them their vehicle can help a lot. Make sure they're accompanied. That's good policy. What other tools do you have? You can use flip charts, you can use posters. There's a lot of electronic tools out there. We'll talk more about that a little bit later. But remember, Quadrant 2 are processors. They may even ask for the old parts. Now, to me, that's not a big deal. I still meet people in the industry that they get all freaked out when somebody offers them or asks for the old parts. They go, no, what are you upset about? You know what they say to me? They don't trust me. It's not a case that they don't trust. They need more information. These Quadrant 2 individuals need the information. They want to see the old part. Or they may have somebody at home or somebody somewhere else that they need to explain or justify or rationalize why they spent that money to have that vehicle repaired. So they may very well ask you for the old parts. They may very well ask you for more information. Keep it in mind, task-oriented, slower transactions, slow things down, give them bullet points, still ask them the most convenient way to contact them. You should always be collecting email information and verifying telephone information with every customer that walks through that door for your own records. Okay? So, Quadrant 1, task-oriented, fast transactions. Quadrant 2, task-oriented, slower transactions. How do you recognize a Quadrant 2 individual? They're likely to ask you a few more questions. They're not going to be quite as jacked up as Quadrant 1 will be. They'll be a little bit calmer when they come through the door. They'll ask a few more questions, although they won't be real talkative. Treat them well, they can be great customers. We'll talk about Quadrant 3 next. All right, so let's talk about Quadrant 3 customers now. We've discussed Quadrant 1, which were task-oriented individuals that prefer fast transactions, and Quadrant 2 customers that were also task-oriented but needed a slower transaction, the processors. Now we're down here in Quadrant 3. They prefer slow transactions, but they're people. I call these folks the donut bringers. You're all nodding your heads. We all have one, don't we? And sometimes we have one or two. These are the individuals that come walking in with that box of donuts at least once a week. And what do they want to do? They want to talk. They want to tell stories. They're definitely storytellers, right? They need a lot more information, mostly because they want to engage. And they may process a little bit more slowly than Quadrant 1 or Quadrant 2. Think about why maybe you dread seeing this individual coming. See, I used to ask my groups in my seminars, what do you consider a good customer and what do you consider a bad customer? And Quadrant 3 individuals invariably ended up as an answer for both questions. Because some love to see them coming with the donuts or the bagels, and then others dread seeing them coming because they take up an inordinate amount of your time. They ask a lot of questions. They tell far too many stories. They question every line on the bill. And it's painful, isn't it? Especially if you're yourself a Quadrant 1 customer. Quadrant 3 customers, along with Quadrant 1 customers, they can clash. But I encourage you to think about Quadrant 3 customers in this manner. If they're showing up at your establishment with the donuts or the bagels or whatever they bring, or just themselves, and they're carrying on a conversation and spending a lot of time in your waiting room or a lot of time talking to you at the counter, I promise you, you're not the only place they're doing that. They're doing the same thing on the golf course. They're doing the same thing at the bagel shop. They're doing the same thing at bingo. They're doing the same thing everywhere they go. Now, if I tell you that satisfied customers, if we get to trust on that customer satisfaction pyramid and we satisfied customers will refer 2 to 3 new customers every year to your repair shop. Think about what a satisfied Quadrant 3 customer will do. A satisfied Quadrant 3 customer may refer 5 to 6 new customers a year to you because everywhere they go, they're talking. So the time you spend with a Quadrant 3 customer that needs a slower transaction and they need a connection to people is well worth it because it will pay you incredible dividends. Now, as much of a challenge as they are at the service counter to deal with because those conversations can get so long and you're at the point where you're leaning and you're nodding and you're talking and maybe you're trying not to fall asleep, as painful as that can be, you can use that individual. Because that individual is going to have a little more patience with you. And you can use them to help manage that pile of customers at your service counter. We'll talk more about that in just a couple of segments. But quadrant 3 customers, slower transactions, people, give them time, give them information, show and tell with them. Take them out into the shop. Accompany them to their vehicle. Show them what's wrong. Show them how it went wrong. And show them what you're going to do to fix it. They will appreciate the connection. And that connection that you form with them will allow them to talk about your shop and your customer service, your levels of customer satisfaction, everywhere they go. Think about it. Quadrant 4 is next. So we've arrived at quadrant 4. We talked about quadrant 1, fast transaction, right, and task-oriented. And then quadrant 2 was task-oriented and slower transaction, the processors. And then there were the donut bringers, slow transaction, people. And now we're over here in quadrant 4. Like quadrant 1, they prefer fast transactions. But like quadrant 3, they need the connection between you and your organization. And that's really, really important to remember. You see, quadrant 2 and quadrant 4 can be a little bit difficult to differentiate. The quadrant 2 are very task-oriented, and sometimes that can appear like they want fast transactions. But they're slower transactions. They don't necessarily need the connection. Quadrant 4 needs the connection like quadrant 3 did. Now, I use this example because I'm quadrant 1 and I prefer a fast transaction. I can walk into your shop, I can walk up to your counter, you can be as grumpy as you want to be with me. Doesn't bother me because I'm watching you to see if you're doing your job. And if I perceive that you're doing your job and you give me a fast, efficient transaction, I don't care how grumpy you are with me. I see you doing your job, I'm going to head off and do my job. I'm okay with it, quite honestly. Quadrant 4 is you can't get away with that. Quadrant 4 is the ones that will stand there in front of you waiting for you to say, "Good morning, Mrs. Smith, how are you?" They don't want to be asked how the family is. They don't want to be asked how their vacation was. They don't want to be asked anything but, "How are you?" Or "It's great to see you again." They want to feel the personal connection. It's got to be quick, but it's got to be personal. They want to be connected with what they're doing. The other example that I've had people bring up in class is when they walk into an establishment and they pay money for something and nobody says thank you to them. They get very annoyed, very upset. Quadrant 1, doesn't bother me in the least. You did your job, I do my job, you don't have to thank me. That's fine, I'm okay with it. But that's quadrant 1. Quadrant 4, they want to feel appreciated, they want to feel the personal touch, they want to feel the connection, but they still need a fast, efficient transaction. Show and tell can work with these people because that's about establishing relationships. Pre-printing repair orders is really important to them because the message that sends is, hey, they were ready for me, they expected me. Recognizing them when they come through the door is really, really important. Give them the bullet points also because they want fast transactions, but they still need to feel that connection. So that's quadrant 4. We've talked about 1, 2, 3, and now 4. In the next segment, let's talk about how these all work together and how you manage them at your counter. Stay tuned. Mr. Smith, copy your invoice, your keys. Pleasure doing business with you. Enjoy your weekend. So let's talk about using this knowledge that we have about customer type. Because we've identified quadrant 1 through 4 now, and the trick is to recognize them when they walk through your door. But of course, they don't all come at you one at a time, do they? They'll come in droves someday. What happens if you get a quadrant 1 customer at the counter and a quadrant 3 customer walks through the door and you're by yourself at the counter? How do you handle that? Or what if you have a quadrant 3 at this counter already? And they're leaning on the counter and they're telling stories and you guys are sharing donuts. And 2 quadrant 1s walk through the door. How do you handle that? So let's talk about using this information. The first thing you've got to be able to do, and I hope you've been thinking about what quadrant you fit into, what quadrant your spouse or significant other fits into while we've been having this discussion. Because the most important thing is that you recognize that customer. You don't have to get it right 100% of the time, but you've at least got to recognize the significant cues. You see, a 3 and a 1, those are the extremes, aren't they? The fast, efficient transaction, getting in, getting out, don't want a whole lot of information that belongs to the quadrant 1, and the quadrant 3 that's going to hang around for a while. Those are the extremes. 2s and 4s, our industry is kind of built for 2s and 4s, right? We've taught service writers for years to be personable, to go over the invoice, as in slow the transaction down or give bullet points, be efficient. 2s and 4s, you've got a lot of latitude. It's almost hard to mess up with a 2 or a 4. But the 1s and the 3s are the really tough ones. And the 1s and the 3s are the customers that are most challenging for you. So what do you do with the 3 at the counter when the 2 come walking through the door that are quadrant 1? You have an advantage with quadrant 3. You have a tool in quadrant 3. You see, you can say to that quadrant 3 customer, I'd love to hear the rest of this story. Can I get these 2 guys in and out of here real quick, and then I'll be right back to you? And what did the quadrant 3 just hear you say? They just heard you say that you want to hear the rest of their story and that you'll be right back. So how patient are they going to be? They're going to be pretty patient now, aren't they? They're hanging out. They may not have a whole lot else to do. Or they may say, I'm all set. I'll let you get back to work. We'll see you later. What did the quadrant 1s hear you say? The quadrant 1s saw some exceptional customer service, didn't they? They saw you excuse yourself politely from that quadrant 3 without pushing them away. And they also heard you say, I want to get them in and out of here. What can you do to get quadrant 1s in and out quickly, especially if you have a waiting room full of people or you got a line forming at your counter? Because those quadrant 1s are the ones that are tough to deal with, aren't they? Especially when you have a line. Use what tools you have available to you. If you have a pre-printed repair order and you know what they're there for, just ask them to sign it and get them going. You can excuse yourself from the person right there at the terminal when you have a moment and say, excuse me for 2 seconds, let me have this gentleman sign this repair order and I'll be right back to you. It sends an important message. Don't do that with a quadrant 1 at your terminal. Get them going and then handle the next quadrant 1. If you've got a night drop envelope at the counter, or you've got a customer problem analysis sheet, we'll talk about that later, at the counter. These tools can be used to gather information from quadrant 1 customers. You know what I say about handling quadrant 1 customers? They're like dealing with 4-year-olds. What do you do with a 4-year-old? Those of you that have kids can probably give me the answer. You give them something to do. Quadrant 1 customers are a lot like handling a 4-year-old. They're antsy, they want to get going, they want to do. Hand them something to do. If you give them something to fill out, here, ma'am, I know you want to get going. If I could just collect some information from you regarding your problem, we'll get you out of here quicker. The thing it does by giving them something to do is you've just put their time back in their hands. When you ask for them to fill out the night drop envelope or the problem analysis sheet, and it's quick, it's easy information, it's not going to take a long time. You've handed them their time. You've basically said to them, you control how long you're going to be here for. So they give you the information, and then they know if I do this quickly and efficiently and I hand it back to the service writer, I'm out of here more quickly. They would much rather do that and have the control than wait in line while you talk with quadrant 3 or quadrant 2 or quadrant 4 for the next 10-15 minutes. Okay? So think about what tools you have at your disposal. Remember what these individuals need. Quadrant 3s need the connection. You have the ability to use them. Set them aside for a minute. They'll stick around. To handle quadrant 1s that need convenience. They're in and out. They want to get going. They need convenience. 2s and 4s, think bullet points. They need more information. Show and tell works really well with those folks. Quadrant 1s, don't try to show and tell. Ask them, but don't try to show and tell with them because they generally don't want to spend the time. Think about what tools you have to get quadrant 1s moving along. Rental cars, loaner cars, rides, shuttle buses, whatever it may be. They don't want to stick around. Okay? So it's about knowing your options, knowing your alternatives, and knowing what tools you have, along with recognizing the customer types. Every customer type needs a certain thing in that transaction. Don't forget about it, practice it, think about it, and you'll increase your customer satisfaction. More to follow. Now that we've talked about the 4 customer types, and before we move on to the actual write-up process, the mechanics of write-up or what it's going to look like to the customer, I want to talk about general customer expectations. See, each one of those quadrant types has very specific needs, and that's what we've discussed. But there are some general customer expectations when they come walking through your door that every repair shop needs to keep in mind. So, what do customers expect when they come to you? First of all, why are they coming to you? They're generally coming to you because they can't take care of whatever the issue is themselves. How does that make them feel? It makes them feel a little bit out of control, doesn't it? Because they need you. They don't have a choice. And that doesn't happen every day in our life. You know, an analogy might be going to the doctor. You can't fix what's wrong with you. You need the doctor. You have to trust that person, don't you? Because you don't have the knowledge yourself. Well, the same is true of their vehicle. And in many ways, shops are doctors to vehicles. The person needs you, but they still have some expectations. Maybe it's a very negative expectation. Maybe they expect the experience to be poor. And if so, you have a significant opportunity to improve on that expectation. But what else do they expect? In 15 years of working for a major automotive manufacturer, with my job being customer satisfaction, customer retention, and avoiding lemon law, I learned through experience that 90% of customers that we went to lemon law or arbitration with just felt they hadn't been listened to. Customers expect to be listened to. That's their number one expectation. Think about it when you take your vehicle into a different repair shop. What is your expectation? Do you not expect the person behind this counter to listen to what you're saying? I know I do. So that's their first expectation, to be listened to. Their second expectation is to receive value for their money. When I ask groups, what's the number one reason customers hate bringing their car to you? The number one answer is money. The number one reason is really convenience. Okay, and I'll save that discussion for a little bit later too. But they show up at your facility knowing they're going to spend some money. And most customers, 90% of them, are okay with that. But they expect to receive value for that money. So they expect to be listened to. They expect to receive value for their money. They expect an effort to be made with repairing their vehicle. We talk about fixed right first time a lot. And that is when I show up with a problem to your shop, problem with my vehicle, you fix that vehicle right the first time I'm in. Does it happen all the time? No, it doesn't. Can we improve it? Yes, we can. But the bottom line is, the industry being what it is, cars being what they are, and technology being what it is, we can't always get it right the first time. But an effort should be made to alleviate that customer's concern. And if a customer sees that an effort is actually being made, they'll be a lot more patient with you. So they expect to be listened to, they expect value for their money, and they expect an effort to be made to alleviate their concerns. Those are the general expectations. Now, I would suggest to you that what they don't expect is just as important as what they do expect. People are funny about their cars, right? And you may be one of them. When customers get their vehicle back from a repair shop, when they walk away from the counter after they've given you the money, they get in their car and they want it to be like nobody was ever in that vehicle. They don't expect fingerprints on the dashboard. They don't expect the radio to be on a different station or turned up too loud or even too low. They don't expect their seat moved. Some of these expectations are realistic and some are not. But they're expecting the vehicle to be just like it was when they brought it to you, minus whatever problem was. So that's something they don't expect. They don't expect, dirt in the back seat. They don't expect fingerprints. They don't expect trash in their car, hamburger wrappers in their car. Keep that in mind. They don't expect to come back to you for more than one repair attempt. Whether that's realistic or not, we can discuss that. But they don't expect to have to come back more than one time. They don't expect to not receive value for their money. So keep those expectations in mind, that they want to be listened to, they want the concern to be alleviated, or at least an attempt to be made. And they need to perceive the attempt was made, and they want value for their money. Those are the general expectations. Now we'll talk about the write-up process. Stay tuned. So let's discuss the write-up process, the actual process. Now that we've covered customer types and customer expectations, what do you do when that person walks through the door? What are you physically doing? And how are you gathering the information? You see, to me, the write-up process is the single most important step in the entire exceptional customer service experience. We're working on the base of the pyramid still, right? We're trying to get to trust, but we're working on creating an exceptional customer service experience. So we've identified the type when they walk through the door. We understand what their needs are. Now what do we have to do? Well, I would suggest we take a step back. What did we do before the customer arrived? We talked about scheduling in the previous DVD, Service Management Made Simple. Once the scheduled appointment is made, what do you do before the customer walks through the door? I would strongly encourage you to review customer service history before they come through the door, just in case you are quadrant one and you need a fast, efficient transaction. Why do you want to review customer service history? There's a lot of reasons to do it. It goes along with preventative maintenance menus, of course. You may want to retrieve the preventative maintenance menu for that customer's vehicle. You're preparing yourself for the customer's visit. And you're preparing to send a message to the customer, number one, that you're ready for them, and number two, that you're in tune, no pun intended, with their vehicle and their needs. So if we retrieve service history and we retrieve a preventative maintenance menu, what are we looking for? Well, preventative maintenance, of course, we're looking for the mileage and what maintenance might be due roughly around that mileage. Be really, really careful selling on mileage, however. Quick story, real story happened to me. When I was a technician, I received a repair order one day for a 60,000 mile service on a vehicle. I pulled the vehicle into my bay, I pulled the spark plugs out of it, and they're brand new. So I thought, well, that's funny, and I popped the air cleaner, and the air cleaner was as white as new fallen snow. I thought, boy, this is kind of strange. So I pulled service history myself as a technician, and I discovered that my rock star of a service writer had sold this poor woman 3 60,000 mile services in the last 9,000 miles. Here's how it went. She walks in, ma'am, I see you have 57,000 miles on your vehicle. You're almost due for your 60,000 mile service. Here's what we do. Would you like it? Oh, yes, I would love it. She shows up 3,000 miles later for the next oil change, and this individual looks at 60,000 miles and says, ma'am, you're due for your 60,000 mile service. Here's what it is. Would you like it? Oh, yes, I would love it. She shows up at 63,000 miles, and he looks at that and he goes, whoa, you're past due for your 60,000 mile service. Here's what we do. Would you like to do it? And again, she says yes. You see, he never reviewed service history. Reviewing preventative maintenance schedules is awesome, and it's great to do, and it's a good upselling tool because it's an important conversation to have with the customer. But compare that to service history. You want to see 3 things with service history. You want to know what was performed during the last visit, to make sure you're not selling on mileage and somebody's already sold them that service. You want to know what was performed the last service visit so that you know whether what they're coming in for today might be related to that. If they just had a rear brake job done and they're coming in today for a brake noise, that's information the technician's going to want to know. You see, I encourage technicians, the first step that they should do before they even confirm the customer complaint is get service history, because it's a piece to the puzzle. So you want service history for what was done last so you don't upsell on mileage and make a mistake like this gentleman did in my story. You want service history to see what was done last in case it's related to their complaint today. And you want to review service history for anything that was recommended last time that they asked you not to do. Because maybe you can remind them this time, and you should remind them this time, and ask them if they want to do it this time. So before that customer even walks through your door, between the time they make the appointment and they walk through the door, pull service history, retrieve a preventative maintenance schedule, and prepare yourself to have the conversation with the customer. Now, when that customer does walk through the door, and you've got a pre-printed repair order, you've already printed out the repair order, you've already pre-printed service history, or at least looked at it, and you've already printed the preventative maintenance menu, what message does that send to that customer? It sends the message that we knew you were coming. We expected you. We are ready for you. Have you ever seen the scenario in your shop where the customer walks up to the counter and you ask for their name and they give you their name, Mrs. Smith, and you're looking around and you can't, and you say, hey, John, have you seen Mrs. Smith's RO? No, I can't see it anywhere here. What's the customer thinking? Customer's thinking, number one, what's going on here? Number two, they don't really know who I am or why I'm here. Three, they're definitely not prepared for me. And most importantly, is this how my whole visit's going to go? Are they really this disorganized? By pre-printing a repair order before the customer walks through your door, by having service history reviewed and having a preventative maintenance schedule available, you send the message that you're prepared. You're welcoming that customer. Now, when they do walk through the door, you want to greet them positively, happily. Come out from behind the terminal. These terminals are fantastic. These computers do a lot for us, right? But they're also barriers between the customer and the service writer. Come out from behind that terminal. Have the conversation with the customer here. It sends a very different message, doesn't it? Okay? So prepare for your customers. Greet them positively, consistently positively, even if you're having a bad day, even if you're really busy. If that customer walks through your door and you greet them in a positive manner, it sends a message to everybody else in the waiting room that this is the way you do business. This is the culture of your business. You are happy to see every customer that comes in. Keep that in mind. We'll continue the write-up process in just a minute.